All right, welcome. It's time for that all-important conversation that we wanted to have. But I've got some questions for you. First of all, we all know that politics in Kenya isn't just politics. This is a country where politics is almost like family, it's identity, it's like a religion, faith. We don't vote for our politicians as much as we anoint them. We don't elect or rather vote for these political parties as much as we swear allegiance to them. This is a country where the colors of your political party are more sacred than the constitution. This is a country where your allegiance to Mtu Wetu is more important than patriotism. From Mandera to Lagdera, from Makuyu to Kikuyu, Bunjosi to Adungosi, wherever you call it, this entire country, the voice is the same. Mtu Wetu lazima apite. Our person must win at all costs. But we ask you tonight, is it really worth it? Is this what loyalty means? Are we patriots? Or are we prisoners to the politics of devotion? These are some of the questions we want to ask ourselves tonight. And to help us break this down is, of course, our team and the people we have in studio tonight, as well as you, our dear viewers, from wherever it is you're watching us from. So first things first, before we introduce them, I want to ask you to tune into this conversation. Tell a friend to tell a friend. A politically active, a switched-on Kenyan, an active Kenyan, as we call them. Let them know that this conversation is happening right here, right now, and we're happy to hear what you have to say. My chat is open. The YouTube chat is on the other part of the screen. If you're watching us through YouTube, know that you can reach me and reach us through this conversation. Shall we begin? Yes, we shall. First, we would like to introduce our guests, and starting with Mr. Kidi Mwaga, who's the chair of the Inter-Parties Youth Forum, but he wears many hats. Kidi, welcome.
Thank you so much. Asante.
Everything good?
Feeling very good.
Karibu
And
sana.
happy to be here.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
Next, and this guy is not a stranger to our screens. He brings a sharp wit and intellectual analysis. He's a political risk analyst by the name of Dismas Mokua. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
You must tell me where you get your shirts. I'm absolutely enamored by them.
That is a state secret.
It's a state secret. Goodness. All right, and joining us from the ODM Women's League, the young captains of that particular subsector of the ODM party, we're talking to Rebecca Kwamboka tonight. Karibu sana.
I'm happy to be here.
I see things have shifted from the last time I saw you.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Allow me to also introduce our other guests in the studio tonight. I'll be mentioning you right when I address you with a question. Karibuni sana. And the people at home, karibuni sana. Let's kickstart this conversation. And Dismas, I have to ask you this question. You have studied Kenyan politics for a long time. You understand this through and through. You've also studied other democracies and other forms of government across the world. But let's start with the Kenyan context. What makes us as Kenyans so emotionally tied to our politicians, even when the facts do not actually support that devotion?
That is a very loaded question, but I guess it's all about multi-party politics and the way we place a huge premium on individuals. Mm-hmm. Kenya is among the few countries in the world whereby you have individuals who are in fact stronger than political parties. Mm-hmm. You have individuals who are stronger than systems. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we glorify these individuals. For instance, when you talk about political parties in Kenya, the political parties are never, ever founded on ideas or principles. Mm-hmm. Say, if you go to America, when you're talking about Democrats or Republican,
right, then
you've got political parties that are founded by ideas. But in Kenya, the first step is you become a very powerful political personality. Then you establish a political party. Then it will be, everybody in the political party will be dancing to your drum beats. Although, in as much as you use the US as an example, it's beginning to change because the Republicans and the Republican Party, as people have known it for a long time, it's no longer the Republican Party under Donald Trump because his word is as good as law. So what is really beginning to emerge is that majority of people may not know, but we've got political fanatics all over the world, and they really worship these. They worship politicians, and if you use Kenyan examples, the political party leaders in Kenya are never ever wrong, and even when they are wrong, the leadership will justify the position. For instance, the late Raila Odinga was never wrong. He never did anything wrong. And if you made a mistake and you give a divergent position, there's a very high probability that you're going to be punished. A few days ago, you saw the founder of this political party called DCP saying that in future we need to elect a certain caliber of people, and he's suggesting that he only needs lawyers to be elected to the National Assembly and Senate. There are some members within his, people want to join his political party who are not lawyers, but these guys have no capacity to tell Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, no, you are wrong. Because if you say you are wrong, then your name is going to be listed on a certain notebook, and you're not going to get the nomination. That is the tragedy. In fact, one can easily venture and say that it's idolatry, that a majority of voters in Kenya they worship these people. And it's for that reason that they cannot question a single decision coming from these personalities, because they worship them. And even when these guys take the wrong decisions, they still get a way of justifying those wrong decisions. And that becomes a threat to democracy. Because, democracy is anchored in the three pillars. You've got the judiciary, legislature, and the executive. Those three arms are supposed to check on each other. But at the lower level, you have individuals who are supposed to question the leader's decisions. That when you've been elected, you are a leader. We are supposed to question your decisions. But because we worship you, we will not question you. You know the way you are told, right. If you, for instance, you are a Christian, you cannot question God. So we've placed these politicians in that level that we cannot question them. And you're part of the media, but the media is also part of the subsystem. You've got a number of journalists in Kenya and editors aligned to specific politicians that if that story is running or it's being covered, they will not question. Sometimes you go to news conferences and you see leaders engaged in misinformation and disinformation. But because media houses or editors or journalists are aligned to these personalities, they don't ask a question. And that is a threat to our democracy.
I see. Kitty, I want to bring you into this. I want you to help me understand and help us understand by extension what your view is on this really deep loyalty that we give to our politicians. And Dismas has helped us understand some of the origins and the nature of it. But from where you sit, where does this come from? Is this, may I ask, is this merely survival, a political survival, a survival instinct, or is it a deeper, desire to belong? What is it, Gidi?
Thank you very much for that wonderful question. I think to address myself to it, I must point out that there are a multiplicity of factors that brings us to that sad place. One of them is the personalization of power. And this goes to the very foundation of the state, of the Republic of Kenya, when after the fallout of the nationalists in 63, 64, 65, then you see greater personalization, not only of power, but also the concentration of that power. Then subsequently, because of the concentration of that power, we get into an era of massive patronage. That patronage then over time becomes into what we call clientelism, where now, to be able to get anything from the state, you must walk in a certain way and dance in a certain way. And then over time, politicians and people who are seeking to rise into office then do not seek to rise to office on any programmatic agenda. And if there is anyone speaking on programmatic agenda, they are sidelined. You see this for the students of history in the 74 elections, when the young bureaucrats who were running the nascent industries and in the government, in 74, they begin joining politics. They're joining politics when in 69, if you read history again, Kenyatta had fallen out with, I think, Kungu Karumba. And he is telling him that, no, Kagia, when he's telling him that we were in prison, but what have you done for yourself? So that then from that time...
Kagere was different from the rest of the Kapenguria six. It was different because by that time,
yes,
Kagere was allegedly the poorest,
yes,
by worldly standards. The others were multimillionaires.
Yes.
Kagere was still a simple guy with his simple home and everything.
Very good. You put it very nicely. Part of why they were very rich is that they had, smashed and grabbed from the state. And majority of some of them had become multimillionaires. They had large tracts of land. So that you drop the question of resettlement, that was part of why the Mau Mau had gone to war. So then when Mzee passes on in 69 and in 78, I'm Kenyatta, and President Moi promises to follow Nyayo, to follow the footsteps. And because everything that was bad during President Kenyatta is now amplified under President Moi. By the time we get to 2002 and afterwards, you get to 2003, and Michelle Arong writes the book, It Is Our Turn to Eat. Our turn to eat brings us in a place where now we think we have the NAC government, it is national renewal, it is an opportunity to start afresh. But then you realize that the same old demons we had fought previously now creep back into government, and in 2004 you have Anglo-leasing, and you have the killing of Chris Odhiambo Mbae, and you have everything bad that we had dealt with, and now we get to 2007 and 41 against 1. Mm-hmm. I lay this history or historical background to underscore the work that collectively with these young people seated here, we have to do to reset the politics of this country and move the country from politics of monopoly. Yes, from politics of monopoly to politics of programs and a programmatic agenda. Thank you.
But I have a question, and I want to throw this to you as well as to you, Kwamboka.
Thank you.
Listening to this long history, this is who we are. This is how our politics has been literally from the get-go. How easy is it to shift from that? Comparing, of course, with other parts of this world where we've had similar kinds of politics. Yes. The story you told could as well be the story of Ghana with Nkrumah.
Yes.
It's the story of Tanzania, it's the story of Uganda, it's the story of the USSR with the politics, the big personalities, Stalin and Lenin, the cult of personality and all that. Those guys, to shift from that to what they have, took a bloody revolution. And it's not a swear word, it was actually bloody. How do we shift from this programming to what you're calling a programmatic and very pragmatic type of leadership?
Yes. There is a gentleman called Khan Ross, and he writes a book called The Leaderless Revolution, where he says that the problems of the 21st century are so intractable that no one, supreme leader can claim to solve them. And therefore, they will require people to work together in concert. You see this very close at home in 23, when the people are protesting higher taxes. And you see it in the form of the Sufuria Revolution. But the political class, buoyed in part by the political capital they had gotten by, getting declared as the government of the day, decided to turn a deaf ear to that cry. Mm-hmm. The following year, 2024, even in spite of a rapprochement among the political class,
a handshake,
ordinary people are able to disrupt the status quo so much so that the government had to be dissolved and reconstituted afresh. I think that as we get into 2025, 2026, as we head into 2027, the young people are tired of being told, wait. The young people, because they can see for themselves how much the political class does not prioritize that which concerns them. As a consequence, I believe that they have got the tools, the imagination, and the intellect to reset this country, and they will. Okay.
Kwamboka, I want to bring you in here and allow me to put you on the spot a little bit. Mm-hmm. You were part of the Gen Z uprising.
Yeah.
We had you in the studio in 2024 and this year as well. Mm-hmm. Something has changed in your title. Mm-hmm. At that time, you were part of what they called the leaderless, partyless, tribeless youth. Mm-hmm. Okay. Today, you are operating within the structure of the ODM party. Would you care to tell us about that transition and that decision and what motivated it? And then you talk to us a little bit about what these gentlemen are saying.
Okay, about that transition, I think when you look around, you have to make one wrong decision. Every decision turns out to be wrong at the moment, but you have to choose one decision that serves your ideologies and your desires. So I think ODM Women League served that for me. And now to the discussion that we're having here. Politics is a business. Politics is a business, and politics is a game of minds, is a mind game. So the moment you understand that as a voter, as a citizen, then you'll understand that this other person has to offer you value for you to actually vote for them. And the politicians have understood that, and now they're using emotion to sell their product, which is vote for me, and they're bringing emotion. And when it comes to emotion, you cannot really think straight. And that's what majority of Kenyans are doing. I said in 2022 that whoever will vote for Ruto, our current president, must have been traumatized to a particular level that they are used to abuse, because every marketing or campaigning tactic he used was a form of manipulation. If you had it and you weren't buying it, it would land as manipulation. But majority of the population is not learned, and that's how the politicians end up manipulating us. So politics is a game of business, it's a game of minds, and until we realize that as citizens, we will never come out of it. And then saying that Gen Zs, because we are leaderless and now partyless, we are going to save this country, we can only do too much. We need everybody to come on board, the Gen Zs, the millennials, the Gen Xers, and not assume that it is us who need the revolution. We started it, but we need the backing of other generations. Yes.
Interesting, interesting. I feel like you want to throw something in there,
yes.
Then we go to her.
I think one of the biggest challenges, really, the reason why Kenyans essentially, or typical voters across the world, engage in worshipping the politicians, that is even against the 10 commandments, that you're actually worshipping a politician.
You called it idolatry.
Yeah, yeah. Instead, you're supposed to be loyal to God and loyal to your country. But majority of voters...
Hopefully.
yeah, obviously. Yeah. And then, of course, unfortunately, in Kenya, we are loyal to politicians. And one of the biggest challenges is that we have abandoned thinking. We have outsourced our thinking to the political leaders, that we do not engage in critical thinking. Because if we engage in critical thinking, then when these politicians place their manifestos on the table, or when they deliver a speech, when they come up with a document, you can have an objective view. And if you subject the politicians' statements to objective views, then there's no idol worship. You're not going to, swallow their lines, understand the white men say hook, line, and sinker. You will subject it to critical thinking. But what happens when you don't subject you to critical thinking? When we are coming up with a new constitution, guess what Kenyan said? That if Mr. Raila Odinga has gone through these documents and he says it's yes, then it's going to be yes. If it says no, then it's going to be no.
Baba akisema ndio.
Amesema. So what happens to critical thinking? It's the same thing which is obtaining today with this political party by the name DCP. That when Mr. Rigathi Gachagua says that I've got 7 million votes in my back pocket and I'm going to distribute it like a cake to all and sundry, there's nobody within his neighborhood who will say, wait a minute, I come from Mount Kenya. Do you actually think that you have me in your pocket? Now, one would easily venture, and these are unpopular statements, but we are not here to sell ice cream, is that Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, in fact, is the biggest threat to a united opposition in Kenya, because he wants everybody else to dance to his drum beats. He's on a path to ensure that he manipulates all the voters. So at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of misinformation and disinformation. For instance, he says that I represent people from Mount Kenya who've been kicked out of the Kenya Kwanza administration. But look at the cabinet composition. Look at the principal secretaries. He's the only person who was kicked out and replaced by another person from Mount Kenya. But he's been able to nationalize his personal issues to the extent that there is a good number of Kenyans fortunately or unfortunately, depending on where you are seated, who actually believe that Mount Kenya has been excluded from the administration. If you go to the National Assembly, check out who is the majority leader at the National Assembly. Where does he come from? Who is the clerk of the National Assembly? Where does he come from? If you remember the list of cabinet secretaries, just count them. Out of 22, how many are from Mount Kenya? Look at the list of principal secretaries. Look at parastatal heads. And reports have been done by the government's own agencies on even the skilled employment. But people believe that. Even outside Kenya, when you look at international politics, I mean, you say you go to Tanzania, they had an election today, but because a number of people are not engaged in critical thinking, they did not even follow the process, and some of them have become victims of misinformation, disinformation. I suspect because people don't engage in deep research, they may not even be knowing that in the last concluded election in Tanzania, that the Chama cha Mapinduzi administration made sure that all the presidential candidates, apart from the president, the other 15, all of them were given 3 top-of-the-range vehicles. They were given state security, and they were given state resources for their campaigns. But you know, President Samia Suluhu won because she comes from a very strong candidate. So are you going to blame Samia Suluhu from coming from a party with a very strong candidate and resources? Are you going to blame her because she's got a weak opposition? Now let's come back to Kenya. How come we glorify people who steal? And we know for a fact that these guys are thieves. They've been found guilty by competent agencies. So if there's a thief from my village, I'm very happy. But if there's a thief from Kidi's constituency, nasema huyo ndio mwizi. Now, we've said these things times above number, that these guys cannot even become the chairman of a cattle dip in your village. But you make him the chairman, or rather you make him an MP, or you make him a governor. In a nutshell, because I can see that there's a lot of contribution. So what happens when we engage in this hero worship, or when we become fanatics? We suppress top talent. We've always said that...
Actually, allow me to... You see, what you're saying, I can see faces in the audience actually shifting and reacting, nodding and so on about this. Allow me to throw something you've said to the rest of our colleagues in the studio tonight. Particularly the thing you said about critical thinking. Now, guys, I want to hear from you, and starting with you, who has a mic, and please pass the other mic to this young lady. We'll go to her next. Please, we'll come to you, sir. Don't worry about it. Let's start with you, sir. What he's talking about, as a youth leader yourself, do you think a political education system, our civic education system, prepares citizens to actually question their leaders or to merely follow blindly? Let's start with you. With your name, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Logoa Lokwe, and I come from Kibra constituency.
And which party do you support, if I may ask?
I support UDA.
All right. Talk to us.
So first and foremost, I want to believe that here in Kenya, as one of us has said here, that there is some rate of illiteracy, but I believe Kenya is above 75% when it comes to literacy matters. And so, in terms of civic...
Womboka is shaking her head, but we'll come back to her in a second.
About civic education in politics, I believe some of us, or rather many of us, were very, very well informed, but a majority of us as well, we still have ignorance. We really do ignore. When it comes to matters public participation, young people, most of the time, they are not there. The older generation, most of the time, we just hear that there is a bill that is supposed to be passed. It was brought to the people. Unauliza mtu, did you get it? And he's like, I just heard on the news. I didn't follow. So you see, that is ignorance. So for me, I believe that we have all this information, starting from our phones. The media is there. These information are there. But most of us, because of ignorance, we tend to say that it is the government has passed, yet they didn't go for this public participation. Early this year, around March, I went for a public participation through these festival of People's Dialogue festivals. And a majority of people who came there are university students. And there are all these political parties that we are seeing in every now and then at the news. And they were there selling the ideas to these young people. And so I believe that all of us, we are well informed, but we choose to be ignorant. And I want to concur with what Pierre Lumumba said, that three things ails Africans. That is poverty, ignorance, and disease. But the most contagious one is ignorance.
I see. Lokwe, let me ask you this question. In your political journey, you said you support the UDA party. Would you say that what these gentlemen were talking about, that blind devotion that exists in many parts of our political landscape, would you say that the decision to join this party is in spite of this reality or as a result of this reality?
Actually, for me, it is not because of this reality, but it is because of what I believed in when this political party was being formed. And I bought the idea of the UDA based that we had Ruto as the presidential candidate and how he was articulating his ideas. And that doesn't mean that I should be loyal to him. When he does something wrong, I should be vocal and say that you're not doing the right thing. Just the same thing Edwin Sifuna has been doing. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it is not because of what is happening currently, but it is because of what I believed in then.
Okay. All right. Let's hear from you. What do you have to say for yourself?
When you were beginning, good evening.
Good evening. What's your name?
My name is Anita Gimba.
Hello, Anita. Karibu sana.
Thank you. My background is in criminology.
Right.
And at the start of this conversation, you had mentioned something to do with patriotism. And how I see it is that blind loyalty does not equal patriotism. It is evident that in Kenya, our political choices are often shaped by ethnicity, which is the primary axis of Kenyan politics. And we could also argue that this blind loyalty stems from a point where we keep on choosing the same leaders. And all these leaders do for us is perhaps just change their slogans. And again, we could also say that this inexplicable allegiance to our leaders or the political parties, it's very detrimental in the sense that it clouds our critical judgment and it also kills accountability. And when we stop asking these questions to our leaders, then they stop serving us.
Right.
So how I see it is that politics should be based on competence, and also it should be based on ideals and not identities.
Anita, what you've said actually aligns with a report by Afrobarometer. I think it was about two years ago, and it said that minimum of 60% of Kenyans would not vote for another candidate, for a candidate of another tribe, even if that candidate was better than the one they wanted. You get that?
Yes.
60% of Kenyans. That is a huge number. As a young person, as an active Kenyan, what do these numbers make you feel in light of the election that is coming in less than 2 years?
It's very disheartening, honestly, because when you put that into perspective, it seems like politics is a zero-sum game. So you want to vote someone based on certain ethnic lines, and when that person loses, that means that you've also lost. Not looking at it in a way that the other person is the better candidate.
Okay, fair enough. But and I want us to unpack this thing of ethnicity a little bit better, a little more, I should say. We've been trying to fight tribalism as a country for years. But clearly, this matter is quite big. It's quite wide. You know, there's this sense of belonging and needing to vote in or support someone of that same community is very, very strong. Let me get your views before I open it up. Let me get your views on this. Why do you think we're so entitled, we're so connected to, you know, the people that share the same language and culture that we speak, rather than, you know, being patriots, being Kenyan first, rather than Luya or Bajuni or, you know, Kikuyu?
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Nixon Soita.
Karibu, Nixon.
Thank you so much. Now, on to your question. First of all, I believe that we are Africans and we belong to our communities. These are not tribes. These are communities, all right? And we cannot take away the sense of belonging to our communities. That's why I believe that we should build strong parties that transcend tribal lines, like the ODM party. Let's have parties that transcend any particular tribe so that we can have representation for each community at the national table. Because truly, we have interests that are just communal. For instance, when you saw President Ruto in Northeastern, they told him, we have a problem with vetting. That's a problem that is unique to the people of Northeastern. As Luyas or Kikuyus, they don't experience the same. People of Nyanza have their own interests that may not be the same with the people at the coast. So therefore, we cannot take away our identity that is African. We must be proud Africans, proud Luyas, promote our cultures, and then work around a way of unifying it together. And parties is the way to do this. You can see that in the ODM party, proud the representation, right from the National Executive Committee, all through to the grassroots. We have representation from all tribes. So that is my opinion.
Kitty, I want you to jump in on this. Are parties the way to neutralize the negative impact of our proud ethnicity?
Well, if we are still keen to live in a constitutional democracy, then we must give political party the pride of place. I say the pride of place because in constitutional democracies, then you realize that the only way or the surest way to get to power is through a political party. And I want us to examine for a second the role of political parties in democracies. One, they become then the tools through which we do mass mobilization. Of course, there are other means of doing mass mobilization, but we realize that such means are usually, take us to very disastrous ends. For instance, when you start mobilizing using the church, you can mobilize very effectively, but then that could easily give rise to theocracy. Over and above giving rise to theocracy, sometimes it is also what extremist forces then have relied to. So I think that political parties, again with a programmatic agenda, that then, because through a political party, some of the things that ail the state are easily cured. For instance, we are lamenting why we are closer to people we share same ethnic extraction with than some competent individual we do not share surnames with. Again, of course, that goes back to the history of colonization, the divide and rule. Because remember, even when we start agitating for independence, Muzungu makes sure that you can only, even if you form a political party, that political party only operates within certain ethnic jurisdiction. So I think that today in the 21st century, rebuilding political parties again that postures themselves as third generation or as third liberation political parties is the way to go. You ask me the problem with our political parties, most of them still operate as second liberation political parties, the political parties of the 90s and early 2000s. And permit me few more seconds to explain this.
Break it down.
Thank you. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the question of civic and political rights was at the front and center of a political development. But then by the time you get the Constitution of Kenya 2010, you realize that the constitution was so robust in terms of social, civil and political rights, but the people are left out and left behind in how the economy is managed. Secondly, is that in 90s and early 2000, for instance, 92, political parties, the young people were 23% of the registered votes. Today, young people are 65% of the registered votes. So when back then you had, say, KANU Youth Congress, it was understandable because young people are the minority. Today, young people should be at the front and center so that these senior people, we should be preparing leagues for them. If, as political parties are able to appreciate those realities, one, where the country is in terms of the economy, two, the social realities, then I think political parties still remain the surest ticket out of this political disillusionment that we are reeling in. Thank you.
Okay, you say that. And a few months ago when we had the June protests, some of the grievances that were raised by the young people that we had in the studio were that the existing political parties simply do not appreciate young people,
yes.
That it's exploitative, that their support of young people is superficial. Before you answer that, let me hear from you.
Okay.
Where do you stand on this? Do you believe that your political party is actually, genuine in its, embrace of young people?
Thank you so much. My name is Paul.
Yes, Paul.
Inda,
yes,
from
Paul.
the Multimedia University of Kenya, serving as the speaker. I'm coming from Nyatike constituency, and I'm a member of ODM.
ODM?
Yeah, so
I see.
the way we know, ODM is a party that fights for the rights of the people, and that is why you see most of the people coming from Nyanza, and ODM is just a party that is liked almost in the country because they are known fighting for the rights of the people. And as an ODM member, maybe if I start with the party leader, Dr. Oburu, he called himself a youth leader. And if you go to the deputy, then the secretary general is actually, if we look at his age, is a youth. That is why sometimes I feel that as a young person, that is the party that I should support because it fights for the rights of the people. And if you look at, it is a party that has got the structure, as if you compare it with the other political parties. It is
so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you believe your party is actually welcoming the youth and treating them properly?
Yes,
that what
sure.
You're saying?
Sure.
Okay, let's hear from you, sir. You're joining us here also as a youth leader in your own right. Do you believe that the current crop of political parties are actually healthy and fertile grounds for youth to actually not just begin their political careers, but influence how politics is run in this country?
Right, thank you. My name is Dominic Ouma. First of all, I'm here to represent Commonwealth Youth League.
Yes, Karibu.
And for your information, I'm not affiliated to any political party.
Good
for one
you.
reason, I'm convinced and I do believe that most of political parties are used to perpetuate the wish of few individuals for their self-gain. And therefore, even those who call themselves...
Your comments actually elicited a number of reactions from the people in the studio. We'll come back to that. Yes.
If you look at the history of political parties back then from attainment of independence, most of our political leaders have realigned themselves in a manner that there is an even distribution of economic and political powers to specific regions. So at the end of the day, they used the so-called the custodial and the educable group to be able to convince them to do what they want. And so far, I don't think whether political parties stand a better chance of implementing various strategies to ensure citizens get whatever they deserve.
Okay, but guys, let me redirect this conversation for a second. We're talking about these parties. We're talking about personalities. let's talk a little bit about the cost of these things. Those of us who are here in the studio and those of us who are watching at home, you have seen the destruction of property that comes from the fanaticism that is attached to not just political parties but political personalities. Yes. We have seen the loss of life that we have experienced in this country. We have seen the disruption not just to the economy but to education, to transport, and to literally every walk or every aspect of life in this country as a result of political fanaticism. How do we separate the politics that all of us are talking about here in a very orderly and very eloquent manner, I must say, from that force that pours out on the streets and people panic? How do we differentiate? How do we separate that? Dismas.
Well, we must realize that majority of these people that we elect into elective office, and this is not just a reference to Kenya, the majority of politicians, in fact, they are pursuing their selfish interests. And they're not pursuing their selfish interests that are aligned to national and public interests. No. They are pursuing their selfish interests, and they make everybody else believe that, in fact, they're pursuing our interests. Like, for instance, we'll keep on using this example. Mr. Rigathi Gachagua has made everybody believe that by him saying that President Ruto must be a one-term president, that is a national interest and a public interest, but while in fact he wants to settle personal scores because he keeps on referring to himself. He keeps on referring to himself. Now people begin to ask, so you're talking about a one-term president. So what if President Ruto is a one-term president? If today I'm suffering from food insecurity, if I'm having challenges with my mortgage, I'm having challenges with healthcare, so what if you make him a one-term president? Is that a viable proposition? Is that something that you can place on the table? No. Now, a lady behind me called Anita spoke eloquently about the perils of being a political fanatic. When you are a political fanatic, you do not place a premium on character, capacity, and competence. You just look at the personality because you end up, you adore the personality. You would recall some time ago, some politicians, after shaking President Moi's hands, when they're medical doctors or veterinary doctors, they would say, sitanda kuosha mkono. They adore human beings. And as a result, what happens? Nothing happens. Now, look at the political parties you're talking about in Kenya. There's not a single political party in Kenya today that has got number one, internal democracy, that does free, fair, and party primaries. And then there's no political party in Kenya that has had the elections. All these political parties here in Kenya, they say this is the party leader, this is the national official, who has elected them into that office. No, but if you go to other countries like in the UK or in the US, there's actually an election to elect the party leadership. So what happens with these powerful political personalities?
What about these guys? ODM just had some party primaries across the country. UDA has had some party primaries across the country. Well, some of them have not gone very well. But
we'll pose this question to the ODM members here. Who elected Dr. Oburu Odinga as the acting party leader? Is it the party file? Is it Kwamboka here and the rest of the members? Or it's a group of officials who were appointed into those positions by Mr. Raila Odinga that have taken the decision? When you talk about DCP, the interim officials
who
elected them into office, that is something else. When you're talking about these political parties, you'd be surprised to learn that majority of the party members, even some of them who are here, have not socialized with their manifestos. Even during the launch of manifestos, most of the time, the presidential candidates interact with that manifesto when it's been launched. Because the production of this manifesto is left to public intellectuals, friends of the presidential candidate, a very few sharp guys to sit together and come up with a document. Although that was broken last time by Kenya Kwanza because they did a countrywide tour, there was a participation from every county. But the majority of them who claim to be members of a political party, first of all, they're not registered members, they don't pay their subscriptions, and they have not socialized with the documents. Like, for instance, pick an ODA member here or a UDA member here. Ask them, what is UDA's position on global warming? What is ODM's position on global warming? Or on the privatization of the sugar mills in Western Kenya? they'll be mumbling away, and they may get into a challenge, because the parties in Kenya are not anchored on ideas. Now, if we are not going to anchor our politics on ideas, we'll keep on falling in love with personalities. And we go back to this thing now, which is becoming a tired song. We've said it times above number, the Stockholm Syndrome. So they come, we elect them into office, they steal taxpayer resources. You see somebody becoming rich overnight, then you ask him, how did you harness? Which factors of production have you harnessed to make money? They go numb, kneel by mouth. But a few minutes later, they'll tell you that we've been making money. How are they making money? Through procurement. A few days ago, you remember during the vetting of cabinet secretaries for the current administration, cabinet secretaries in public, there was a wealthy disclosure. A number of them were fired. The ones who are coming back, in 1 short year, 2 short years, their wealth double, triple. So when people ask, wait a minute, when you have been vetted, your net worth, you told us, was 200 million. Over 2 short years, it's now 400 million. It's now 600 million. Can you explain this magic to us? Because if you've got capacity to increase your personal wealth, and you've been given a position of leadership, how come you've not increased Kenya's wealth? How come you've not increased the wealth of the ordinary taxpayers? They will not tell you anything, simply because they've cut corners. You know, understand that at some stage, the most lucrative program at the university, when we were growing up, it used to be law, engineering, or medicine, but understand now it's procurement. Why is procurement one of the most popular courses?
Very good question. Interesting. Kwamboka, where do you stand on this?
Okay, let's begin here that I represent Kwamboka. Whatever values or anything I'll say here is on Kwamboka, not on ODM or any party. But what everybody is avoiding to acknowledge is that political decisions are based on emotions. If I'm able to capture your emotion, then I'm able to get your vote. Rigathi Gachagua is like that. I am feeling pain. Can you feel my pain? Exactly. And everybody tries to connect with that pain. And everybody who's connecting with that pain is following Rigathi Gachagua. The same way in 2022, Uhuru is doing me wrong. Are you feeling my pain? He has sidelined me from the government. That's what's happening. It's about emotions for everybody. And then it's very ignorant of us to assume that these politicians, the way they are, that they are fighting each other. They are working together. I came to say that even when Raila lost 2022 elections, if you look at it keenly, it could have been intentional, because he is the mentor to Ruto. So basically, they see eye to eye, just not in your eyes. Okay? So that's what happens when it comes to politics.
Interesting.
And how can we get away from that? Majority of us don't have civic education. We don't know the first word in the Constitution. We don't know the first law in Kenya. We don't know nothing that pertains to our own rights, responsibilities, and the duties of our leaders. So basically, they'll just tell you, you know what, nitapatia bodaboda 1,000. Mimi siwezi rendesha bodaboda, unanipatia nifanyie nini? Utafungulia mama mboga ni wangapi kwa estate yenu, to be very sincere. But you are touching the people wenye wanakaa, the grassroots people, but you used a collective statement. But in an estate of like 3,000 people, you can find like there are only 50 mama mbogas. If he solves for those 50, mama mboga ulizwe, amefanya kazi. And then we allow leaders to just come up with manifestos with no timeline. Ndio ikifika saa hii 2027 unasikia niongezee miaka 5, nimalizie kazi nilianza. To be very sincere, we are not holding our leaders accountable. It's in Kenya that I've seen that we elect leaders and then we are even scared of them. It's like you give somebody power and then you're like, nimempea sasa nichapa nayo. You forget that it's still your power. You see, so that's the entire ideology. We don't know our power. We elect based on emotions. Who's going to touch my heart the most? And then that's why you see politicians are targeting the vulnerable population, the single mothers, the low-income earners, the less educated, and eventually they'll get the seat because the emotion. That's it.
So Ita, would you agree?
No, I wouldn't agree. First of all, on the issue of Fanaticism. I believe that we cannot mention fanaticism and ODM in the same statement.
Really?
What?
Soita, come on.
Yes.
Come on now, Soita, come on.
Let me just explain
come
myself.
On now.
Let me just
come
explain
on.
myself. All right?
All right.
What people are confusing for fanaticism is actually political conviction. If it's true that us ODM supporters were fanatical about Raila, then the party will have collapsed once he died. All right? We were not fanatical about Raila. We are fanatical about what he represented. Integrity, democracy, saying no to corruption. Those are the things that made people go on the street. And you saw even in death, people were all over. It's because they believed in what he represented. Number two, somebody asked on the issue of who elected Dr. Buru as the party leader. As a party, we have structures, and the structures of the party have the mandate, and they actually exercise their mandate to nominate Dr. Buru Oginga Gen Z as the party leader, all right? So therefore, that fanaticism, it's not true. And on the point of whether we have an ideology as a party and whether as young people we are represented in the party, you remember in 2023, the Sufuria Maandamano. The issues that were raised in the Sufuria Maandamano in 2023 are the same issues that we raised last year in the demos. And that's why Baba, Raila Amolo Odinga, came in and decided that now you have pushed the Kenya Kwanza government to the wall. We are in a limbo. We only have two options. It's either the president resigns, as he should have if he was a gentleman, or the parliament impeaches him. There were only two options. But none of them happened because of our political state. You know, they couldn't just do it. So Baba had to step in to stabilize the country. And then he came up with a 10-point memorandum agenda, which we are now working on as a party to deliver before the 2027 election.
All right. I want to hear from a gentleman, friend Omar from the Commonwealth. I want to hear from Lokwe. I want to hear from you, Paul. I want to hear from you, Gimba. But let me read some comments here from YouTube. And Boniface Mbaja, watching live from Kiambu County, you say, amesema ati watu wa one time watafute kazi ya kufanya. Youngest Pillow, you say, you're wondering how suddenly some member of the united opposition has become attractive from every corner of the country. But there's a comment here. The reason why I wanted to actually go this way, there's a guy called Charles Ndungu, and he responded to you, Kwamboka, and saying that the action taken by ODM, can you say that it is aligned with the course started by the Gen Zs? And can you actually state that the ODM Women's League suited your goals? This is Charles Ndungu who's asking that, so prepare an answer for that. Another question here is saying that, here's another question, that ODM joining Kenya Kwanza in the broad-based government left this person with a bitter taste. Becoming a member of a party, they felt betrayed by the leadership for legitimizing a government that had been rejected by Gen Zs. I want to hear where you guys are coming from. We've just come from saying that our parties are without principle. There's an accusation that our political parties are without principle, without integrity, and without a consistent track record. What would you say to this? Let's start with you. Yes, they say that our parties are without integrity, without consistency in terms of ideology, and that we can't really trust them. Where do you stand on this? Because this is a question that Charles has asked.
I would agree with Charles to some extent, because even during the Gen Z protests, when we saw the late Raila Amolo Odinga getting into a handshake with the current president, that left a bitter taste. And now it now begs the question, are these people really taking into account what the youth are going through? And we know that the late Raila Amolo Odinga was a charismatic leader. So in that sense, was that handshake was that handshake meant to, reconcile the Gen Zs and the government who was ordering these killings? And so when you look at that, you can say that it's just all a game of emotions.
I see.
No.
I see. Oma, where do you stand on this?
Definitely. Not most of these political parties are based on, their formation are based on two personalities. That is whether you are rich or mad. And these two key personalities
Oma, we can't hear you. Your mic. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Two
key personalities. That is being rich and being mad. And whenever we talk about two key personalities in political parties, they have one thing in common. A rich person does whatever he likes at any time. And then a madman does whatever he likes at any time. So when we talk about the rich and the mad in the political parties, the most influential leaders in the political parties use their resources. Actually, they mobilize resources in order to convince the mass, the custodial group that I talked about, and the mad, those who makes the loudest noise, the bootlickers. They are used to convince. Actually, I want to concur with what she's saying, that in most cases, when it comes to political field, most of us make decisions based on emotions. And that's where mess comes in. And if you want to narrow down to the track record of most of political parties, ODM party joining the government after the Gen Z protest, I think it was not on a good motive. Because you can just imagine whatever President Ruto is currently doing. These things started back in 1972 when we look at district focus strategies based on the strategies that were meant to uplift the vulnerable. Actually, it's taking advantage of President Raila coming into the government with the political party so as to mobilize the group in readiness for 2027. And I tell you, and I can assure you from where I'm sitting, most of these political parties in the mid-21st century lacks integrity. And they're just there to perpetuate the wish of few individuals who are ready to consolidate wealth for themselves.
All right. Before we go to Lokwe, Kwamboka, there was a comment there that was directed to you specifically. They're wondering, perhaps you need to shed a little bit more light as to what happened from the firebrand Kwamboka, who was anti-Kenya Kwanza and anti-Gen Z, anti-ODM and anti-establishment, to the Kwamboka, who's now an active member of the ODM Women's League.
Okay.
Invite us into your mind for that decision.
Okay. Before I do that, I'd like us to acknowledge that when it comes to political decisions, especially when you are changing to some things, it's about what resonates closer to what you believe in. So when it comes to ODM Women's League, first of all, the ideology about women, I'm all in every time. And then the fact that ODM stood for certain principles that I believe in, I decided to be part of that Women's League. Okay. I think that's how I came.
Charles, do you hear that? Straight away. I think that's a straightforward answer. Charles, I hope that satisfies you.
Then,
yes, please.
This other question here, that the movement between, the coming together of Raila Odinga and Ruto left a bitter taste. We need to start being a little bit more accountable to ourselves. Because once you Kenyans did not elect Raila Amolo Odinga, he stopped answering to you. Let's start there.
No.
They're Kenyans. Yes, he did. You cannot hold someone whom you've not given an elective position by office to account, because now he's just a normal Kenyan. He's just a party leader. If he represents ideologies of opposition or maybe other ideologies of other people, the government can bring him to board as a collaborator, but not as somebody that you begin to say that he failed you or misrepresented you or left a bitter taste in your mouth.
So the people who disagree with that decision, what happens to them? Are they children of a lesser God? Are they wrong for disagreeing with that decision?
They are not wrong in disagreeing with that decision, but they're not accountable because
He's not accountable.
They're not accountable to themselves because Ruto told us he will not accept nusu mkate or any form of broad-based. Who betrayed us? Who betrayed us?
A quick response to Kwamboka.
Interesting.
You know, there is a political party by the name ODM. ODM then, the party leader was Mr. Raila Odinga, and ODM is taxpayer funded. Political parties in Kenya get resources from taxpayer. So anybody who is a beneficiary of Kwamboka's tax, Mora's tax, Alima's tax, must be answerable to the public. You wake up early in the morning, you sweat it out, and then part of your money goes to a political party. So whether or not you're a member of ODM, whether or not you're a member of Kenya Kwanza, whether or not you even vote, whether or not you are a registered voter or even a registered Kenyan, provided you are in this territory called Kenya, you must question every single decision which comes from leaders, elected or otherwise. Even if there's somebody who is not a politician, but is in the public space, is a thought leader, he can influence an opinion, that person, the decisions must be questioned. So suggesting that because people did not vote in for Raila Odinga, then he was no longer answerable to the public, in my view, you are suggesting...
Secondly, I hadn't finished. Gen Zs, we say that we are leaderless.
Let's give her a chance and then you can come in.
We say that we are leaderless, we are tribeless and partyless. And that's where my point of accountability comes in. If you declare yourself leaderless, partyless, tribeless, how then do you expect another person who's declared themselves a leader to be accountable for the decisions that they make?
Interesting. Kidi?
Well, one, I believe that we should learn a thing or two about untaking, so that then until you are invited to speak, you remain quiet. I want to situate this conversation within its proper context, and we are discussing blind loyalty, Kenya's politics of fanaticism. I think we must start from the place that what is the danger of political fanaticism? Today, as we are seated here, one of the biggest threats to democracy globally is a threat of radicalization and violent extremism. Violent extremism and radicalization are taking root in many polities that are democracies or are hitherto democracies, in part because a lot of young people are frustrated by democratic governments, and it is a global phenomenon. You go to America, you see MAGA. You go to Germany, you see AFD. You go to UK, you see Brexit. You come to Kenya, you see the violent street protest. It is an understanding that young people, you go to Bangladesh, you go to Nepal, and all these places. It is because sometimes democratic processes seem so slow to so many young people who want their lives to change instantly. So then two things that must happen, that then political parties that we are discussing must now remember why they are in existence in the first place as governments in waiting. There is something that my brother Dismas is saying with so much profundity, but sometimes it gets lost in the many things we are saying here. My brother is saying that if someone is posturing as an alternative, because parties exist as alternatives, then they must say something that is slightly better than what they are opposing. He is actually saying that DCP is 34 years too late to attempt to reenact politics of monopoly. The politics of monopoly that DCP is trying to practice in Mount Kenya is that we have Honorable Rigathi Gachagua posturing as a savior of the Kikuyus or of Mount Kenya from some imaginary enemy. I say imaginary enemy because if you look at the area of central Kenya, Nairobi, and parts of Rift Valley, they are the beneficiaries of what you call the Seasonal Paper number 10 of 1965. Again, as a consequence of that paper, you realize that wealth, opportunity, and resources have been taken to some of this area disproportionately. Therefore, the least Rigathi Gachagua and his DCP would have told us, for instance, is to what extent the current administration is failing and what are they proposing to do better if they come to office. That way, and if political parties were to conduct themselves that way, I think then we would have a better democracy. Quickly, let me respond to my sister Kwamboka and her brother, the gentleman in orange.
It's called Soita.
Yes, Soita, Mr. Orange. There are instances when political parties contribute in the loss of trust in democracy, especially when you mobilize people on the basis of one agenda, and then at the earliest opportunity of political convenience, you abandon that position and take a position that is in direct conflict with the position you were saying yesterday. If parties are able to remain consistent and speak their truth and be able to implement some of the things they say, then we will be able to push back the threat of fanaticism, especially as the first phase into extremism. Thank you.
Right, and can I just throw this in here? Guys, have we not seen in this country situations where diehard supporters of opposing parties actually go at each other's throats? Not politically, not with rhetoric, but with machetes and rungus and stones. We have seen that. So it actually gets very personal. It gets very deadly. This clash. It's not really a clash of ideology, is it?
Yes.
It's not a clash of ideology. So now I want to throw this out there to all the gentlemen and the ladies in the room. If we were to rewire Kenya, because where we are clearly isn't the best. We have seen, and you've highlighted this quite clearly, we have seen, forget history. Let's talk about, maybe let me say, forget ancient history. Let's talk about current realities across the world. The Bangladesh uprising.
Yes.
What did it achieve? Who's in power in Bangladesh right now?
Who's in power in Madagascar?
Who's in power in Madagascar?
Who is in power in Nepal?
Who's in power in Nepal? Who's in power in Guinea-Conakry? Who's in power in Burkina Faso? Who's in power in Mali? Who's in power in all these countries?
You know, I think the challenge as
after the youth uprising and after the very emotive and polarizing party politics that was happening in those countries, who is in power now? And are those countries better off because of that or worse off?
No, as Kid has indicated, the reason why you have a part of society coming up vigorously and violently essentially goes to two things. It's about wealth and employment creation. Those are the two twin issues that affect every single administration. Now, in other parts like in Kenya, it came out, you know, it became kinetic, and the leadership had to address this issue. Now, there's a conversation that for the young people in Kenya, if for some reason they don't find accommodation within the so-called mainstream political parties, then the Kenyan constitution offers them the unique opportunity to actually come up with a party, a youth-led party. It could, and you know, youth can have a million definitions. It could be age. I mean, like, so it has told us that the 82-year-old ODM party leader is a Gen Z. So youth can have many definitions. But if you don't have accommodation in the mainstream parties, why can't you convince the nation that even at the age of 18, you actually have capacity and competence to tackle those two issues of wealth and employment creation? When you go back to Kenya's history, some of the people who did amazing stuff, stellar work that you can remember today, if you look at the late Tom Mboya, how old was he when he came up with this session of paper, although it led to skewed development, but how old was he? When you look at Dr. Z.T. Onyonka, how old was he when he came up with all these policies? When you look at the PCS Musalia Mudavadi, he was finance minister at the age of 34. And it was very key in, in liberalizing this sector. So people shouldn't sit back and say that on account of my birthday, I'm going to sit under a mango tree or under a palm tree in Mombasa and wait for this leadership to land over here. You must come out and demonstrate what we've been talking about: character, capacity, and competence. Now, if you don't do that, you are going nowhere. Now, when you're talking about political parties, it was a prior question. If you get, say, 10 people from Nyatike, 10 people from Nyatike, probability that 9 out of 10 are in ODM is almost 1. 9 out of 10 will be in ODM. Right now, if you go to Wamunyoro, 9 out of 10 people, there's a very high probability that are in the DCP. But if you ask him, why are you in DCP? I mean, DCP has not produced a manifesto. They have not pronounced any ideas. They've not pronounced any policies. But already people are saying, we are aligned with this political party. Is that what we said idol worship is? Now, look at the other political parties that we have. If you go to South Africa and check out African National Congress, you can actually see what African National Congress stands for.
Right.
You can see what the Democratic Alliance stands for. If you go to Tanzania, you know what CCM stands for. But if you pick ODM in Kenya, what does it stand for? People will tell you on the left, on the right. What does that even mean in Kenya? Social justice. What is social justice? Social democracy. What does that mean? If you go to DCP, from a political marketing perspective.
What about UDA?
Yeah. What is the unique selling proposition of, say, DCP?
What is the identity of a party according to what Mr. Mukoy is talking about? Lokwe. Are you on the left? Are you on the right? Are you a centrist? What's going on?
First and foremost, let me say something before I answer that. What he has just said that war is won on propaganda. And we've seen that with the DCP party. Actually, it is just because of the feelings and affiliation that...
And emotions.
Yes, and emotions. But I believe, again, we both have willpower to make decisions. We shouldn't be easily swayed. And so, for me, for UDA, I believe that there are a number of things that UDA stands for. That is in terms of economy, food security. You talked about global warming. You see, the president said that we should plant trees, about 15 billion trees by 2030. Does that mean that we are against global warming? Yes, we were even given a holiday to go and plant trees from 2023.
I see. How many did you plant?
Actually, I planted a number of trees here in Karura in 2023.
But Karura is already a forest.
Yes, it is already a forest, but we want the tree coverage
to be thick.
Fair enough. Let me throw another question. Were you a student leader by any chance?
Yes,
were you involved in campus politics? How many were actually involved in campus politics here? Tell me, how does the campus politics mirror or differ from the politics, the national politics as we know it? Let's start with you, Anita.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of similarities, and they're not good similarities.
But now, with a lot of current leaders, people in power right now, having been former student leaders, are we just producing the same thing that we're complaining about?
Exactly, because even when you attend these campaigns in universities, they're all based on tribal lines. And you find people campaigning for someone from a particular community. And also, there's also a lot of corruption. There are handouts being given to students.
There's goons as well?
No, goons.
There's goons, right?
Yeah.
In fact, look, were you a goon? You seem personally affected by the question. Yes. Just 1 second. Let's hear from Paul and then Paul?
Okay, thank you. Just the way she has said about...
Which point are you referring to? Goons or
corruption? Really goons, the handout, I mean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you see, this is also the problem that we have in our country, Kenya, where you see, when you see a politician, what you see is money. And I'm happy with the former Prime Minister, because he was one politician that can do mobilization without money. But what about the other politicians? When we see them, if they, for example, they call us here, what we'll be expecting at the end of the talk is money. And that is what sometimes happens in our universities, that has made most of the universities not to develop, because somebody will use money to get into power, but after getting into power, what he will or she will do is to ensure that he or she gets the money back, you see? Yeah.
But Paul, are we learning from this cycle? Are we learning from these mistakes? Let's say as a first-year student, you vote in this manner and you notice that pattern. Maybe you notice it by year 2. By year 3, surely, you should be thinking about a different strategy. And then, okay, you come out into adulting, as you call it, and you go through one election cycle, second election cycle, and it's the same pattern. Aren't we, they say doing the same thing repeatedly is a definition of madness. So is this the madness you're talking about, Omar? Are we mad as a people? Soita, are you mad?
All right.
In following the same patterns, expecting a different result? Yes. Having participated in campus politics. Soita.
Yes, I did participate in campus politics up until I graduated last month. I vied once and I was expected to go through a house nomination. By house, I mean a tribal nomination.
Right.
That is, for example, I'm a Luya. I had to be nominated by Luyas at the university. Now, what I did, the mistake that I did, is that I refused to go to this nomination because I was very naive then, and I believed that I could actually go and win the election without the support of my house.
What did this nomination actually come in form of? What does it mean to be nominated by?
Well, it means that you organize a meeting as members of a community, and then you come together and select one individual that is going to represent you.
And what is the criteria for that selection?
Well, it could be anything. Now people have to campaign so that you choose the best, all right? But at the end of the day, you will choose somebody who is aligned with your tribe. But now my point is this. We cannot take away, let's not lie to ourselves that we can take away the tribes from us. We cannot. People are what they are. That's what they have been for long. But there was a provision in the election rules at the University of Nairobi that say that in a team, because you have 60 members, you must be from different communities. Now that's essentially the structure of a party, that let's form a team. You come as a Kikuyu, I come as a Luya, you come with your people, with their interests, and then we see how we can move forward together. But also, apart from that issue, there are some other issues like goonship that have been there at the university, and these ones need to be weeded out from that level, because if we are not careful, and I think that's why the Duale Act was introduced, to essentially reduce, while it had the backside, it reduced the powers of the student council, but it helped.
Can we talk about that for a second? Just where does this thing for goons begin? Say, we have, they're not actually elections at kindergarten level. The teacher selects the leaders. But as the students go up the academic ladder, class 1, class 2, or year 1, year 2, whichever system you go through, and you go up and you go up, we'd never hear of goons in primary school election of prefects and so on. We never hear that. Hardly do we see goons in high school during election of student leaders. But we do see strikes, though. We start to see strikes. Very rare do we see strikes in primary schools, but we do see strikes in secondary schools. And then we get into uni and college, and we start to see those goons come up. Where does this come from? Kidi, would you help us break this down as a student of society? Where does this thing come from? And why is it so ingrained in how we do our politics that to do this, to gain the power, I mean the vote of the people, you've got to use incentives and coercion, almost as a pincer movement. We don't see this in the UK politics. We don't see this in Australia. We don't see it almost anywhere in the world except here in Africa and here in Kenya. Why is this so?
Well, I think that even in institutions of higher learning, being part of society, the very things sometimes we grapple with in the national politics find its way into institutions of higher learning. And even when you go to professional bodies, you realize that sometimes the coalitions they form to run for some of the positions reflect the tribal arithmetic at the top. So before I deal with that, I wanted to deal with the identity of political parties because I come from a political party.
Enlighten us. Which is the political party that you support?
Make a guess. Of course, I come from KANU.
KANU?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Kenya African National Union.
This is unique. This is
center-right.
And now you guys have done a handshake with the government, which is a story.
I will speak to that if you invite me, but let me first tell you what KANU is, where KANU stands. KANU is a center-right political party. Center-right political parties believe in democracy. They believe in individual liberty. They believe that the best way to manage an economy is through free enterprise. But then that free enterprise is merged with sensible government regulation. Again, the tragedy is that some of the parties we have posture as one thing and then do another. For instance, I think UDA, for all intent and purposes, should be center-right. But the way it conducts itself, it comes off as center-left. Look at the way it has handled the question of housing. Look at the way it has handled the question of healthcare, so that you do not give the market a chance to then be able to sort out some of the messes of society. Growing up, we were taught that necessity is the mother of all inventions. So that when government gives the private sector a chance to operate, private sector at a very competitive rate would be able to solve the housing problem. But then either because a few people want to get supernormal profits, you have government sucker punching everyone into submission. I think as we speak about political parties, we then should first go back. And we need to rebuild political parties, I believe. Rebuilding political parties as not only as governments in waiting, but also as custodians of political aspiration. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, guys, we've got 10 minutes on the clock. I want us to fix the nation. I know Eric Laftif is watching and preparing for his morning show tomorrow. Take notes, Eric. Let's fix the nation. We've talked about goons, we've talked about political parties and integrity, we talked about fanaticism and the dark side of it. We've taken examples from all across the world, from the ANC in South Africa to the Communist Party in Russia, to the uprisings in Nepal and so on, to Madagascar and everywhere. We've gone across the board. Let's fix this nation. How do we make sure that the support that we see for these parties like KANU with interesting support, UDA, ODM, and the guy from Commonwealth, which does not support any party, but I believe you support all Kenyans, and all these guys. And Anita, do you support a party? No. You're partyless still. Okay. So all of these guys, how do we fix this nation? How do we fix our politics? How do we fix this fanaticism that can become a cancer to our society and turn it into loyalty, which is a key pillar in strong parties? How do we do that? How do we fix the nation? For the next 10 minutes, how do we fix the nation? First, on the mic, I can see is Paul. You're ready. Gentleman from Nyatike, I believe?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead. How do you fix the nation?
Yeah, so let me say that sometimes we as Kenyans, we are doing mistake, whereby when we wake up, we only see the national government led by the President of the Republic of Kenya being bad, but we don't start from the MCA here. Then if you want to go up, you can't just start with the up, but you have to start with the down. So let's start from the MCA. Let's hold them accountable. Then we go to the Member of Parliament, we have the women rep, we have the senator, we have the governor, and then let's go is when we go to the president. Let us not just go direct on the national government. Then secondly, we as the young people, we have been blaming the government, but you see the issue of registration of voters is out. You see the young people, the number that has come out to register. So I will request our young people let's come out and let's have these young people that we want to lead, so that we have young parliamentarians that can fight for us. The likes of His Excellency Babu Owino, we see how he has been fighting for the people. These are the young people that we want, so that if there is need to remove the government, then we can find it easily to remove, but we cannot say that one term. Thank you.
Paul is supporting his namesake. Omar, your minute is here. What can you do to fix the nation? What's your advice?
Actually, I would reiterate what Nelson Mandela once said, that education is an important tool used for reconciliation and even for economic development. Once our people are educated, then we are good to go. What we lack as at now is education. You realize that only 6% of about 6 to 7% of the Kenyan population gets an opportunity to join higher institutions of learning. And the 6% that we have are still being influenced by politicians. And that's where the aspect of hooliganism comes in campus, to perpetuate their wishes, right? So if we can...
Are you talking about the campus politicians or the
generally,
the
actually,
politicians?
The campus politics and the national politics are concomitantly connected.
All right, fair enough.
So if we can afford to educate our people on the fundamental principles of political parties as per se, then we are good to go. Secondly, it is high time for us youths to register as voters. Though I am also here to register my fears, because there are some rumors that since 1978, system has been in place to be able to elect people of their own choices. But then, it is high time as youths to take votes, and we not only register as voters. On the D-Day, we'll be able to cast in our votes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Omar. Soita, we hear from you. But before that, let's see. Lokwe, you have the microphone. Please pass the other mic to Soita, and Anita, get ready. Soita, get ready. Lokwe?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
How would you fix the nation?
For us to fix the nation, first and foremost, I'll urge all young people who have not gone to take their registration to become voters, they should do so. Another thing is that now that we are all informed about...
Even the goons will take the votes, my friend.
Yes.
That's okay.
Let them take.
Okay.
And they should be able to make right choices, correct choices. When it comes to elections, you shouldn't choose someone because of handout. You shouldn't choose someone because of he's from your tribe. I was in a certain interview and I said that for me, if I'll vie in 2027, people should not choose me because I'm from a certain tribe. And by the way, about tribes, some of the Gen Zs, they say that tribeless. Yes, some of us were tribeless. Like myself, I was born in Bungoma, raised in Kitale, studied in Nairobi. I also studied in Kakamega. I've gone in a number of counties in Kenya and interacted with those people, with those cultures. What does that tell me? Tell you? I don't have to be loyal to my own tribe, but rather what spheres of interest do I have for this nation? Are they for the interest of the nation or for my own interest?
All right, all right. Thank you. Anita?
So how we're going to fix this nation is by choosing bold accountability. Let us choose leaders who have us, and let politics remain a game of competence. And also remember that when loyalty becomes blind, democracy becomes deaf. So let us be wise in our decisions moving forward.
All right, Anita, by the way, you have a fan on YouTube. I don't know if it's a gentleman or a lady. Someone called Miley7.7 says, Anita is so smart, taking her time to answer questions. You probably have a fan. Soita?
All right. On how to fix the nation, I want to speak specifically to Gen Zs because they tried to fix the nation last year. So I want to tell them that we may have lost a battle, but we have not lost the war. Our country has governance structures. We have a constitution. Let's join parties of our choice. And I will invite all Gen Zs to join the ODM party because this party has been consistent since 2005 when they said no to the 2005 draft, all through to devolution, they have implemented it. So let's join parties, not just as members, but also as candidates who are viable so that we can effect the changes that we wanted to make. The matters, corruption, all of those things.
All right.
And lastly, I will just want to assure my party leader, Dr. Oburu Oginga, Gen Z, that we are fully behind him as the young people. Let him remain strong and firm.
Right, right. ODM has been consistent from 2005 up to now through several handshakes. Consistent. Kwamboka, your point, please.
Okay.
How do you fix the nation in 30 seconds or a minute?
So how we fix the nation is being aware of the political tricks, because in 2027, I think I have a whole handbook of what Ruto will say, of what every other person will say. So if we are not aware of the tricks, we'll fall for them and we'll think that we are making the right decision. The other thing is to be civically aware. Let's get into knowledge of what are our rights, what are the duties of our leaders, and also hold the MPs accountable. The main reason we went to the streets was because the MPs were supposed to impeach the president, who was working against the citizens. But they couldn't represent us, yet we sent them to represent us, so we had to represent ourselves. So let's hold the MPs accountable, because they're the ones who are going to come and wash the president when it comes to 2027. And let's take our votes.
All right, all right. Thank you, Komboka. Kidi, how do you fix this nation? From Kanu.
It's not a very simple thing or something I would answer, definitively. But I would say that Sun Tzu says in his book, The Art of War, that know your enemy, know yourself, know your enemy, 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. After June 25th, 2024, and the brutality we witnessed this year when young people went to the streets, I must say that young people have attempted to rewrite the story. There is a very intelligent collaboration among young people from political parties, civil society, and academia called Manifesto Yetu. You might have seen it. I am part of Manifesto Yetu, where these three young people from different sectors have come together to, number one, interrogate the manifestos of political parties in 2022. Then ask themselves that as we head into 2027, how do we ensure that the politicians do not shaft us again as they have done in the past? As a consequence, we conducted a series of collection of views in all the former 8 provinces. We are continuing with what we call stakeholder engagements in Nairobi, where today I had the good fortune of hosting stakeholders from the media. I suggest that when this process is done and the young people have their own manifesto, then let political parties coming to them then be weighed against the manifesto that they've written for themselves.
Okay.
Part of what they are saying is that they're not only documenting their frustrations, they have also documented in that document how they hope some of the intractable challenges in society can be solved.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, all right. Manifesto Yetu, you said?
Manifesto Yetu.
You said media engagement. You didn't invite us.
You're not part of media.
We had your colleagues.
Okay, so Dismas, just before you wind up, I want to, there's some questions that actually, not even questions, comments. There are some comments that came in through YouTube. And someone says you seem to have a grudge against DCP, and why you mentioned them so much. However, that's a story for another day. We'll invite you for that conversation. Would you please tell us in a minute what your contribution would be to fix this nation?
Well, I think it's reasonable and an act of patriotism to have a grudge against a political party that does not serve national nor public interests. But again, you said that is a story for another day.
Indeed.
In my view,
in your view?
This thing is not complicated. You're saying how to fix the nation. You may be sued by your competition. It's not complicated. In my view, it's linear. And we only need to do one thing. Just embrace meritocracy. Meritocracy is what has sorted out South Korea and Singapore. Just place a premium on meritocracy. How are we going to achieve meritocracy in the 2027 general election? By having Gen Z embrace meritocracy, by having professionals embrace meritocracy. For instance, there's a group, the Kisi and Kuria, they've got a professional group under the chairmanship of Sam Nyamweya, and they've said they're going to sensitize the two communities around the elections in 2027, that if you don't have character, capacity, and competence, they will actually decampaign you. Now, if we take that as a template across the nation, then you will have people with meritocratic credentials leading the nation. These are the guys who will come up with ideas to create wealth, to create employment. But if you're going to vote for somebody because simply comes from your village, simply because is your neighbor where you stay in the estate here,
okay,
but they don't have the leadership credentials, then it's going to be a revolving door. So in other words, we must develop an insatiable appetite for meritocracy.
So, Mukwo, you're saying mambo ni matatu.
Yes.
Competence,
capacity, and character.
And character. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much to all the people that made this a reality. We want to thank you for choosing us to inform you, and thank you for choosing TV47 for this particular conversation. Online, we had actually asked this question. We asked them, Mtu Wetu, politics or fresh faces? Who will you vote in 2027? 18% said Mtu Wetu. 11% said our time to eat. They'll vote for their person. 24% said they'll vote for a fresh face, and 47% said they'll vote for a track record. Once again, Mtu Wetu is 18%, and our time to eat is 11%. Those two are synonymous. So we're looking at around 27%, 28% of Kenyans will vote for Mtu Wetu or our time to eat. Interesting times ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making time to come tonight. Clearly, the conversation is bigger than the time that we have, but we're grateful for this opportunity to attack it from the angles that we have. So thank you once again. You've fixed the nation. Good people at home, thank you so much for joining us. To the technical team that made this bulletin a reality, the people in the gallery, the people behind the cameras, we want to say thank you. And for all the people who are our fans, good night, God bless you, and God bless Kenya.